For our Lunch and Learn agenda today, we're going to take a look at the required role security and company settings required. We'll take a look at a new company setting that's been recently added to Proven Jobs. We will then segue into how to set up our warehouses and trucks, how to set up our equipment in Proven Jobs, review the equipping tracking from Proven Jobs, as well as how to scan equipment from the mobile application. We will then come back into Proven Jobs and take a look at the job costing feature available, as well as equipment audit reports. We'll end with some integrated partner integrations, as well as any questions or concerns. Before we start to use the equipment feature in Proven Jobs, the Proven Jobs administrator will first need to review each applicable role security. There are separate securities that will allow the user to set up and maintain the equipment list, as well as security that will allow the user to transfer equipment to and from the job site location. This setting is available from the main menu settings, roles. Click the edit button next to the applicable role, and we're going to select inventory. Please note that only Proven Job administrators or users given access through their role security can access role menu to make these changes in role security. We're going to go ahead and navigate over into a live database to take a look at those role security settings together. Again, navigating from the settings menu, we're going to go into roles. We're going to select the applicable role, and keep in mind you may need to make adjustments to multiple roles within your organization. We're going to take a look at the project manager role security today. Once we're in the role security, we're going to go down into inventory, and we're going to come into our menu items here. Now there's two different securities that we need to take a look at, or two different levels of security. We have equipment, equipment manufacturer, equipment model, equipment type, and our stock location. These particular role securities would be assigned to the individuals that are going to be responsible for creating or maintaining your master equipment list within your database. Users that will be simply using the tracking feature by moving equipment to and from the job sites would only need to be looked at from the equipment tracking area. So here at the top, equipment, this would be maintaining the master equipment list. So if we want to give that user the ability to access, to create, or view, we'll want to give them the applicable securities. Now in this particular case, our project manager only has the ability to view the equipment list, but not necessarily make any changes to adding or editing existing equipment. If we want the user to be able to see the equipment that's been applied to the job, we would want to give them this list view option. Also, with that setting of maintaining and managing our equipment, we would want to look at our equipment manufacturer, our equipment model, and our equipment type. Now, the manufacturer and model are not requirements of the system. They're additional information that you can certainly add to your equipment pieces, but it's not a requirement. The equipment type, however, would be something that we would have to have on the equipment. And this would be your main types of equipment, your dehumidifiers, your air mover, your air scrubbers. So we want to make sure that we set the security so the appropriate individuals can get into these areas. The last area that would be maintained by the individual maintaining the master list would be the stock locations. This would be allowing them to create additional warehouses or trucks, or where we're going to store that equipment when it's not physically in use. The last security would be our equipment tracking. This has to physically do with moving the equipment from the default location to a job site and then back from the job site to the default location. So for our project managers or anyone in the field that would be responsible for moving equipment to and from the job site, we want to make sure that we give them full rights to this particular security. If they don't have this full ability, they won't be able to move and scan and view the equipment from not only the web application, but from the mobile application. Now, there are a few company settings that we also need to take a look at. So also a PJM administrator or proven jobs administrator would need to go in and take a look at the company settings. The company settings are available from the settings menu, company settings inventory area here. We have a couple of options to review: the default barcode format, as well as the equipment type, model, and manufacturer. Again, these are the drop-down lists that are going to allow us to add this information to our equipment once we're in the equipment area setting up the physical pieces. There is also a new security added to the company settings in regards to not allowing someone to close a job within the system without the equipment being returned back to its default location. Would encourage you to go in and set this, because we don't necessarily want to have equipment still on a job and close it physically, especially if we're going to be using the job costing feature. We'd want to make sure that we've incurred all of our costs before we close our jobs. The setting is available in company settings within the jobs, and our checkbox to not allow the company settings. So when we jump back into our live database here, getting into the company settings, we go into settings, company settings. We're going to go into that inventory area. We're going to see our default barcode format. The formats that are supported by our system are code 128, a QR code, and a data matrix code. And then we'll take a look at the equipment types. Again, these are your basic types of equipment. Allows us to group them in groups by type. So we have our air mover, air scrubber, dehumidifier, a lockbox. You can add tools in here, anything that you want to be able to track, or you can certainly create a type for and create an entry into the system for that asset or equipment. You have the ability to add your drop-down lists for your model and manufacturer. So if this is information that you do want to keep track of on your individual assets or equipment pieces, we would come in here and create those additional models. Now, as you purchase new equipment, new manufacturers or new models of equipment, I would encourage you to come in here and add those models and manufacturers. So when we go to enter the equipment, they will be available for selection in the drop-down list. And that last setting that's new would be that not allowing closing job, just available up in here within the company settings within jobs. We would not allow to close a job with equipment when it has not been returned back to its default location. The next part of the setup that we would need to complete before we physically start creating equipment in our system would be setting up our warehouses and trucks. So from our main menu equipment, we're going to navigate down to warehouses and trucks. Our equipment can physically be assigned as a default location either to a truck, a warehouse, or an employee. Now, your employees will already be set up and available to you to select, but in this specific area, we're only concentrating on those warehouses and trucks. So right now in this particular database, I have a truck set up and a couple of warehouses, and I do have a warehouse set for my pieces of equipment that are currently out of service, so I can get them out of the mainstream and put them into a warehouse to where the user will know that they're not currently in service. Once we have our equipment, our warehouses and trucks set up, we're going to go ahead and go into our equipment menu. And this is where we would be physically setting up our pieces of equipment. So navigating back to the main menu again, going to equipment again. And this is where we're going to see any active equipment pieces that we have currently already set up, as well as allowing us to create new equipment within our system. To create a new piece of equipment, I'm going to click the Create button in the upper left-hand corner. Within the equipment menu, it's going to allow me to select an equipment type. And again, we need to make sure we set those types up in company settings first before we can select them here. We're going to select our default location. So when the equipment's physically not in use, this would be where it would be returned back to. And again, your location, your default location can be in an employee, it can be a truck, or it can be a warehouse. We're going to select our category and selector, and this has more to do with financial side of things. So if you do decide to have job costing enabled on your equipment, when we select our category and selector, we would see this category selector in the job financials tab on the job and also in our actual cost reports. Now, typically, if you're unsure what to do here, we typically recommend the direct cost and the selector of one, but you do have the ability to select any category or selector of your choice. And keeping in mind, your category and selectors can be added via your job types from the company settings. We're going to add a description for our piece of equipment. And it can be a combination of the type of equipment as well as maybe the manufacturer of the equipment and maybe the model. We're going to enter an asset identifier. So if your company does have a separate asset identifier as well as a barcode for your equipment, you're going to want to enter that here. Some clients also choose to enter their serial number for the asset in this asset identifier, but it's completely up to you. It does have to be a unique number, as there can only be one in your system. That goes the same for your barcode. Those two do need to be unique. Now, in the instances that you don't necessarily have an asset identifier, you can certainly use the barcode, and the asset identifier can be one and the same. So in this case, I'm going to say that my asset identifier is 1234, and my barcode is 111 or 000112. Now, with your barcodes, do pay attention. If you have any processing zeros or trailing zeros, they are important. They are serving as placeholders. So you will want to make sure that you include any of the zeros. If I was just to enter 12 into here, the system would not pick up on that barcode if we're physically seeing zeros in it. Going back up here to our max days, we can set how many max days we want that equipment to be on site before we start to see the system make that piece turn red within the mobile application. So in case most industry standards, we'd want our equipment max days of anywhere from 3 to 5. I'm going to go ahead and set my day to 3. If you want to have your system calculate a cost for that equipment for being on the job site, you can certainly set your cost per day. Now, this would not be what we're charging the customer client or what's coming out of Xactimate. This is what we're charging the company ourselves internally, almost like a rental fee to ourselves for using that equipment. Your equipment wasn't free, you have maintenance and other ancillary costs involved with your equipment. So this allows you to put a direct job cost against a job for using that particular piece of equipment in the field. Now, this is an optional feature. You certainly do not have to enable the job costing feature by entering a cost here. But if you do, we're going to go ahead and enter that number here. And the system will cap that cost at 3 days. So the max days also comes into play when we're looking at the cost per day. If you do a cost per day, you do need to tell the system max days. Otherwise, if we leave this set to 0, the system will not calculate your cost. So you do need to set a cap on how many days that we would want to see the equipment on the job site, as well as how many days we want to cap the job costing to. So for example, if the equipment was on site for 5 days, the system would only charge this job for 3 days total. Then towards the bottom, we have our model and manufacturer. Again, if you're choosing to capture that information, it's not a requirement of the system. And we're going to hit our save button. And we'll see our piece of equipment get added to our list here. Now, at any time, if you need to manipulate an existing piece of equipment, you can certainly do that by clicking the edit button next to the applicable piece and making your necessary changes to your areas here. You'll also be provided with an equipment history below, showing you where that equipment's been. As with all of our column headers within the system, you're going to see that you have the ability to filter and sort by the data within these columns. Now, we're going to jump back to our slide presentation here just for a moment and talk a little bit about our clients that have the PSA Desktop application. For these particular clients, your equipment will need to be set up at the desktop level. This can be done from the main menu within Job Management. We're going to navigate into Equipment Management. And once we're into Equipment Management, we can add a new piece of equipment. Just like we see in the web application, we have the ability to add our description, our asset ID, our category, our model, our manufacturer, our barcode, our default location and category and selector, and then our optional rental cost per day and max per day. Now, when you complete the equipment here, you're going to want to make sure that you're hitting all of those main areas in order for a successful sync to proven jobs. So once we've got it set up and in your next sync cycle to proven jobs to the web application, we'll see that equipment populate in the equipment list. And that's where we're going to go next. We're actually going to go into the physical equipment list to take a look at how we would see our equipment and where it's currently at, and we can transfer equipment from the web application as well. So we're going to go to our main menu, Equipment, and we're going to go down into Equipment Tracking. Once we're in Equipment Tracking, the top portion of the menu would allow you to move the equipment to and from the job site. So if we're not necessarily having our team move it via the mobile app, we can still move equipment from the web application. Over on the left-hand side, we would select transfer to or to transfer to a location. You'll notice mid-center changes based upon my selection. And if I'm moving equipment back from the job site to a warehouse or to a truck, I would select my piece of equipment first, make my selection, and transfer it back to where it needs to go. When I click the Save button, that's going to move the piece back, and we'll see that change here. Before I move anything back, we do have the ability to sort and filter in our column headers. So looking at this, you would want to designate someone within your organization to take responsibility over the equipment tracking. We'd want to make sure that our equipment isn't exceeding the max days. So in this instance, if I filter by my location, I can see where my equipment is and at what job. I can also see my max days out. We can see this top job. This equipment's been out for quite some time. So we'd want to make sure that that gets back to its default location. I set some equipment earlier up today on the Jennifer Bricky job here. And if we do make a room selection when we're entering our equipment, we will see that information populate here. I'm going to bring over my mobile application, and we're going to take a look at that and how we would transfer a piece of equipment from the mobile. Just give me one moment. I lost my casting. And we'll take a look at the mobile. So when we log into the mobile again, we're presented with our main menu. We're going to go ahead and navigate to our Jobs My Schedule. We're going to go ahead and select our job. Now, I did place equipment earlier on this job this morning. So when I go into the equipment tab over there on the right-hand side of the screen, we're going to see at the very top of the screen that I have equipment left on the job site. Now, since it was moved this morning, it still says it's 0 days out and it's still in the white there. If we do have an instance where the equipment has exceeded its max days, it will turn red. And I'm going to hop over to another job that has exceeded. Now, you'll notice the system's trying to be helpful. When we are on a job and we navigate away, the system will notify you that there's still equipment on this job site. And if I'm okay with that, I'm just going to go ahead and hit my OK button and go back out and take a look at one of my other jobs here. Now with this job, this is a job that's been out for quite some time. You'll notice that it's turned red. So it would be another visual cue to our technicians or our users in the field that this equipment has exceeded its max days out and we need to get it returned back to our default location. Now from the mobile application, I can return it back to the warehouse by flipping my toggle there where it says transfer to job. And now it changes to transfer to location. In my pencil icon below in the location fields, I have the ability to select a location. And again, a location can be an employee, a truck, or a warehouse. In this particular case, I'm going to move it back to my main warehouse. And I'm going to click on my piece of equipment to indicate that's the piece I want to remove. You could also scan the equipment as well to show the selection, but I find it easier to just tap on the piece of equipment until we see it at the bottom there and we hit the save button. The menu will refresh itself, and if we don't see anything at the top portion and we've got 0 items selected, we know that we were successful in moving that piece of equipment back to its default location. Now for the reverse, if I want to move equipment to the job site, I can scan using my camera or my scanner. Now, the scanner would require you to set up a wireless Bluetooth scanner. If you choose to do so, it's not a requirement. I find that scanning with your camera works equally as well, and I'm going to do that now for you. I'm just going to select my camera button. It's going to pull up my camera and allow me to scan my barcode. And it's going to allow me to go into my next one. And we see as I'm scanning my barcodes, it's picking up my pieces of equipment. Now with your equipment location, where we saw before, you can set it to a room. You can certainly do that. In this particular instance, I'm going to click into the pencil icon. If I have rooms already set up on the job, I can certainly select the room. If I do not, I can always click into the room field and manually type in that location. So if I want to designate where each piece is being placed, I can certainly do that. Once I'm happy with everything, I've got my 3 pieces selected, I'm going to hit my save button. Once I hit my save button, we're going to see the equipment at the top. We'll see the equipment count and we'll see the days out. Now keep in mind, having a barcode or scanning a barcode is not a requirement of the system. If you don't have barcodes or you're in the process of purchasing barcodes, you can manually select your pieces of equipment. You'll notice towards the bottom of the screen there where we've got equipment, there is a pencil icon. This would allow me to go in and select my pieces manually. Now, we would encourage you to do the barcode method just to prevent any user error from selecting the wrong piece. But again, it's not a requirement to use barcodes. Now, with the mobile application, you can transfer your equipment within the job like I am right now. Or you'll notice that you can transfer equipment directly from the main menu. So depending upon your preference, you can certainly do it from either location. So if I go through here, I can then choose my new job, scan my equipment with my camera scanner, and go about updating my job notes or attachments. We're going to go ahead and navigate back to the job. And we're going to take a look, or I should say navigate back to proven jobs, and we're going to take a look at the still equipment tracking area. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my menu here. And we'll be able to now see, if I sort by my location, I can see those pieces of equipment that I just transferred over to my Bobby Thompson job. Once we have your equipment scanned, we can see this at the job level as well. So if I go over to my job here, I'm just navigating to jobs and jobs. We're going to go in and click the edit button to open the job. And if I go into my equipment tab, we will see that equipment that's been placed on the job. So your team at any time, without having access technically to the equipment tracking menu, so we're not giving that particular option to that particular role security, the user would still have the ability to see what's been applied specifically to the job through the equipment tab. on the job. Now, when we move the equipment back from the site location back to the default location, and we have a cost per day set up on our jobs, we would then be able to see financials populate on the job financials. So I'm going to go into a job that I transferred earlier, and we can now see job financials populate because we decided to have the system apply a cost to that piece of equipment. So once I'm in the job, we're going to go into the financials. Within the financials, we're going to go into costs. And within the costs, I'm going to be able to see the equipment and the associated cost for that equipment applied to the job. And keep in mind too, again, this is one of the pieces of equipment that was on the site for more than over 100 days. Since we had the equipment capped at a certain amount, it's not charging the job for all of those days, but it's only charging it for the max days that we set on that piece of equipment. This cost would also be available through your reports, through your actual costs reports. Now with our equipment feature, we do have a few reports available to you. I've got a few pinned to my menu bar. And if we want to get into those reports, we can go into reports, list all. I'm just going to type in equipment. We have an equipment history report, an equipment list report, and an equipment location report. So if I want to see a history of a particular piece of equipment, I can go in and select a particular piece of equipment, or I can select the history for a particular job. Let's grab one of my pieces here and see if we can get this to turn over. So in this particular case, this dehumidifier has been out several times back and forth to jobs. We can see that information here, and we can see the days out as well. Going back out to our equipment menu or our report menu, we can use our little button here, taking us back to list. We also have the ability to see the equipment list. So if we want to pull and see how many air movers we have, we can select the category or categories. So if I want to see my air movers and my dehumidifiers, I'm going to go ahead and select my submit button, and I can see what I have active in my system. This report will show you the max days that we have set, as well as the cost that we have set. Now you'll notice that our system calculates on an hourly basis within the reports, and it's the same thing with the job financials. The web application calculates the job costing on an hourly basis. So if we have equipment set on the job for 24 hours and that piece of equipment is $12, we would see that it's going to be costing 50 cents per hour for that equipment to be placed. We're going to go ahead and back out and take a look at our last report, which is our equipment location report. This information can be maintained from the equipment tracking menu, but if you want to see this information within a report fashion, you certainly can. You can find equipment based upon its default location. So if I want to see where everything's at in regards to my main warehouse, I'm going to select my default location. I can also have the report grouped by its default location or its current location. So again, when making this selection, it's looking for all of my equipment that has a default location of main warehouse, and it's going to tell me where it's currently at. So all of these pieces of equipment right now are currently in the main warehouse, and that's where they should be. This piece of equipment is technically would indicate that it's been moved back to the wrong warehouse, because technically it should be residing in the main warehouse, or it could be an instance where we're loaning a piece of equipment to our other warehouse temporarily. And then below that, we can see that these pieces of equipment typically would be stored in the main warehouse, but they're out on a job site currently, and they indicate that job number of where it's at and which pieces. You can do the flip and the reverse of this if I wanted to see a different warehouse or a specific job or a current location. I can certainly do that as well and tell the system to group by current location or default location, or even equipment type. And I can see that these pieces of equipment are currently in our main warehouse. So if I was doing an inventory count of my assets in the warehouse, I could run this report and say the current location is the main warehouse, sorted by the equipment type. These pieces should be in my warehouse right now. We're going to go jump back into our presentation. And we're going to talk a little bit about our integrated partners. Now, if you are in the need of barcode tags, you can certainly purchase those barcode tags or ID or asset ID tags from any vendor of your choice. We do have a relationship with Camcode as well as Metalcraft. They both provide either durable labels or plastic labels or metal labels, depending upon your price point. Within this area here, we can see it's our integrated partners are available on our canamsys.com pages, integrated partners. There are links to their websites if you want to take a look at that information. Just a reiteration of before, the barcode types. Our system is compatible with the following barcodes: our code 128, which is just a linear barcode, a QR code, and a data matrix. The data matrix and the QR code are the two-dimensional barcodes that traditionally store more data, but you can certainly use just a basic linear code 128. So if you are going to be working with a vendor or with Camcode or Mastercraft, you want to make sure that you get barcodes within these particular formats to make sure that our system will recognize that. We also have some relationships with vendors that provide more, if you're looking for something more robust outside of what our system can provide. We do have relationships with Envisitag, Logicos, and Neuroglobo tracking. These would be more of the RFID or GPS tracking, to where you're setting up stations either in your vehicle or using a gun instead of scanning your individual pieces of equipment. These integrations would be information sent to those partnered vendors. It's a one-way sync right now, so it would eliminate the duplication of having to set up that job in those particular applications. Again, links to their websites can be found in our canamsys.com pages, our integrated partners. As a reminder for everyone, our proven 2022 PSA user conference is coming up here in a couple of months in the fall. We're scheduled for an in-live conference this year in New Orleans from October 26th to October 28th. If your team is interested in attending, please complete your save the date form. This form can be found at our CanAmSys pages in regards to our PSA user conference. The conference is a well-attended event, allowing your team to meet with other companies like yourself. We will have different training tracks depending upon what your focus is, either sales, marketing, production and field operations, and financing. So again, if you're interested, please take a look at our Save the Date page and get yourself registered so you'll be notified of any new information regarding the conference. That does end our session for today. If there are any questions or concerns, please feel free to enter them in your chat box now, and we'll get those addressed. So there was a question in regards to the recording of the presentation. The presentation was recorded. It will be available. We do have a YouTube link or location to where all of our lunch and learn recordings are being stored, we can certainly send those out to our attendees today on when that video is uploaded and with a link to that information. Question, can the max numbers of days be set of days instead of hours? So currently it is set to days. The system just calculates the costing at an hourly basis. So you would still be set to days. There's a question regarding the company setup and how to I believe you're asking about the max days. Yes, in your equipment setup, there would be an ability for you to set your max days. And again, that's going to be done from the equipment menu. Within the equipment piece itself, you would enter your max days for your piece of equipment. Now, if you are a PSA Desktop client, you're going to want to make sure that you set up this information from the desktop, and that information will sync into the web application. And I do want to reiterate, if you have successfully set up your piece of equipment for our desktop clients, you will see that piece of equipment populate in the tracking area. If you do not see the equipment sync up to the web application here, it means that you're missing a piece of information in the setup in the desktop. So you'd want to make sure that if you're adding new pieces of equipment, you would make sure and go to the web application and make sure you see them there first before we would release that piece of equipment to the team to start using in the field. Now, there was a question in regards to the syncing of the desktop to the web. So yes, you will see this equipment information sync back down into the desktop, and you'll see that at the job level and at the job costing level as well too. Question about what about QuickBooks? Where does it show and does it sync? So this particular feature in regards to the equipment tracking itself does not sync to QuickBooks. The cost that is incurred stays and remains within the job cost within PJM. It does not sync into QuickBooks. Can I manually add more days to the job after it's over the max days? No, the max days is set and it's a guideline. So if your equipment certainly exceeds the max days, the system is still, it's not going to automatically move the equipment off. It'll still sit on the job, but it will just indicate that it's over its max days by highlighting itself in red in the mobile application. Is it possible to get some sort of notification when the equipment is past the max days out on the job? Currently, right now, the system will only turn that max days red within the system to indicate that it's exceeded its max days. In the mobile application, there is no direct notification. That is certainly something I can take to our development team to see if that's something we can add to the functionality. We are in the process of redesigning our mobile application, so we're constantly changing, but we can certainly add that to the list for development review. Is there a report to show over the max days? I don't believe so. You would have to see if the equipment's over the max days within the equipment tracking menu. I'd have to go back and take a look at the report to see if it gives max days. So just give me one moment. Again, if it's not something we currently offer, we can certainly look at modifying our existing reports to show max days. The equipment location report's not showing anything on max days, but it may be available on the history report. So the equipment history does indicate days out, but it wouldn't indicate if it's over the allotment. So that's certainly something I can recommend to our development team. If there's any other questions that you have, or you'd like a presentation or review, or would like to schedule some training on how to navigate or set up your equipment, feel free to reach out to our support department at canamsys.com for assistance. That does end our presentation today, so thank you for your attendance, and we will talk soon.